What's going on, Falcon fan? This is your boy Ricondo coming back at you with another video. So today, guys, we're talking about some Falcon news. We're going to go ahead and knock out the end season review for this Atlanta Falcon team. Even though there are going to be a lot of changes coming around the horizon for these guys, but we're going to talk about some positive and negative things that going into next season. We're definitely going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Kirk Cousins contract, the restructure that he was able to do, and what the implications mean for that. Moving into March 13 deadline for Kirk Cousins, and then of course we're going to talk about the head coach and GM search for this Atlanta Falcon team. We have a new candidate that's probably, if you're being smart, go to the top of the list. And John Harbaugh will talk about that as well. So, but guys, with that being said, if you have not already, go ahead and please subscribe to the channel. Please hit that notification bell so you know I drop another video. Please hit the like button so I know you guys are here to talk about. And please share my video throughout the YouTube universe so more people can come here to talk about. That's right, these Atlanta Falcons. So, guys, I'm going to wear a new hat pretty much every other day, right? So let me know what you guys think. Of course, the Falcon hats. Of course, you guys saw my red hat yesterday. These hats I had for a while, just rocking the hats. But I love hats. So pretty much I love the Falcon hats. I got a whole bunch of Falcon hats. So I'm gonna rock a new hat every day. When we talk about these, what's going on with the Atlanta Falcons, we got to stay in tune. What's going on with it? Um, this is going to be a interesting off season for the Atlanta Falcons because honestly, I don't know if the Atlanta Falcons, did something like this ever. When they get rid of the whole, um, everybody, they clean house completely. I don't know if they ever did that before. So, that's where that's where we're going to start with this thing. So, this is going to be new, but check out the hat today. I know you guys like my red hat yesterday, but let's get into the first topic of the day. The first topic of the day is Kirk Cousins' contract. Of course, so we all know that Kirk Cousins pretty much had all his guaranteed money in his first 2 years of his with the Atlanta Falcons. Of course, we was had to give up the roster bonus for that $10 million last new league year. So he owes we owe him $10 million. That'll be the last of that $100 million that we owe him. However, if the Kirk Cousins was going to come back this year, he was going to be on the book for that $35 million or $45 million. So the Atlanta Falcons and Kirk Cousins came to agreement to restructure his contract for 2026. With that restructure, the Atlanta Falcons was able to have clear up so much cap space. His cap hit this year is only $2.1 million. So that gives the new GM, the new head coach, the new president of football operations, all the ability to go out in free agency and add a lot, of pieces, some holes that we might have seen this year. Being able to, bring back some of our free agents like a Kyle Pitts, like a Caden Ellis, those guys that's going to be free agency this year. Being able to get a contract done with Drake London. That'd be something else that they probably need to look at. But guys like Tyler Algier, which I probably think is going to be gone. Kyle Pitts, in my opinion, should be come back. We're going to talk about him in just a minute. We talk about the in-season review. Caden Ellis is another guy I think we should consider bringing back as well. But that restructure of Kirk Cousins' contract was a godsend, and he agreed to it. And it's interesting he agreed to it because the most interesting thing about it is his money got pushed to 2027, and by that much money getting pushed, I think it was $32 million getting pushed to 2027. It turns to a guarantee for 2027 for Kirk Cousins, which is $67.9 million, which means by March 13th, the Atlanta Falcons have to make a decision on Kirk Cousins, and that is to designate him as a post June 1 cut, right? Which would spread the dead cap over the next two seasons, which would be 27 and 28, or they could restructure him again and keep him on, right? So they will have to make a decision by Kirk Cousins by March 13th, right? Um, because they're not going to go into 2027 with that $67.9 million guaranteed money on his books. That will not happen. So on the 13th, they're going to designate him as a post June 1 cut, or make another restructure with him to redo his contract for the following seasons. He will not play this season on that $67.9 million going into next year. That will not happen. So be on the lookout for March 13th. We're definitely going to get a lot of insight on what the Atlanta Falcons going to do. In my opinion, what I think they're going to do, they're going to cut him, right? And that's why I said it's good on him, because the fact that he allowed the Atlanta Falcons to clear up a lot of cap space in 2026, and then be designated as a post June 1 cut in 2026, for 2027, is good on it's good for him, but it's good for the Atlanta Falcons, especially because it allows Atlanta Falcons to do some team building this year. Because before this, the Atlanta Falcons only had about $4 million of cap space on the books. By restructuring his deal, that opens up so much cap space, and like I said, they'll be able to do certain things with some players. Like I said, they'll be able to negotiate a deal with Kyle Pitts if they so choose. I would franchise tag him right off the bat, right? So they be able to negotiate that deal. They need to try to keep Kate Ellis on. I think that nucleus of the defense that we had is something that the Atlanta Falcons can build on. So those two guys in particular, I think Tyler Gill deserved to be a starter somewhere. So I don't anticipate him coming back. And you can always find a good backup running back in the draft. There's so many good running backs that come out of college year in and year out. And you definitely want to have a two-back systems with Bijan, workload that they use with him, but you want to be able to have a backup. So that's definitely what we want to see. But this is major news for Kirk Cousins and Atlanta Falcons organization, is to come to an agreement to clear up that cap space for 2026, and it brings up that March 13th deadline where Atlanta Falcons going to have to make a decision. Now, with the ideal of the new general manager, new head coach coming in, they might want to keep Kirk, which, like I said, they're gonna have to make a decision on that money for next year, because he's not going to play on a $67.9 million hold for 2027. That's not going to happen, and it would guarantee that money by March 13th. So they will have to either come up with another deal with him or cut him, and like I said, designate him as a post June 1 cut, which would spread the money over the next two seasons. So that's what my thought, my mindset is going to be, which means that the Atlanta Falcons are going to have to probably bring in another quarterback, a veteran quarterback, to fill in, to play backup quarterback to Michael Penix Jr. So that's what would have to be the case. Right now, right off the bat, I'm looking at guys like Russell Wilson. I know people thinking about, but as a backup quarterback, bridge quarterback, I don't think nothing wrong with that. A guy like Jameis Winston, I'm not sure how many more years he had in his contract with the New York Giants. I think he would be a tremendous backup quarterback for Michael Penix Jr. as well. So those two guys I do have in mind. You could look at a guy like Justin Fields. He's a little bit on the younger side, but being a backup quarterback, the kid out of Green Bay as well, he's probably going to garner a little bit more money if you're going to go with a guy like that, because he's still young, still have a lot of potential, and he's played really well in Green Bay. So, those some guys you could consider and think about. Once they decide to make the decision, Kirk Cousins. I don't anticipate Kirk Cousins being back next year, unless the new head coach just really want to go in the next season with a 38-year-old quarterback and try to do something with that. I feel like with the Atlanta Falcons going in, bringing in a whole new regime in, it's not like we have to win right away, right? This is something that you're trying to build for the future. So, in my opinion, either you find out what you got in Michael Penix Jr. or go find you another young quarterback. I don't think you should bring in a 38-year quarterback, especially with that price tag, where it'll hinder you from building your team the way you need to build it. So, I anticipate the Atlanta Falcons designating Kirk Cousins as a post June 1 cut and going out and get another veteran quarterback to back up Mike Penix until he's ready to go. A reliable guy that maybe have to start the season. We don't know Michael Penix's timeline, but we'll definitely get more insight on that. So guys, definitely want to hear from your opinion about the Kirk Cousins restructure that took place, and how that's going to help the Atlanta Falcons being able to move in free agency, bringing back some of their own free agents and actually going out and trying to fortify some of the holes that the Atlanta Falcons had in other areas on this team as well. Okay, that was easy. All right, let's go to the next topic, which is the head coach and GM search for the Atlanta Falcons. So right now there are 7 teams that need a head coach. 7 teams, especially with the news that we just heard probably about an hour and a half ago with John Harbaugh being released from the Baltimore Ravens. I think that probably the most intriguing job now. It's probably put number 1 on the list as one of the most favorable jobs. If you're going in as a head coach, they got a great GM in Ozzie Newsome. That front office is really put a lot of good pieces together throughout the years for the Baltimore Ravens to be successful. And if you just look at their track record, they've been in contention for so many years. Fumble here, drop pass here, miss kick here. Those guys still competing for championships. They got a 2-time MVP as their quarterback, and got pieces on defense and offense where you can work with. So definitely would probably be one of the most favorable jobs. Behind them, I like where the Atlanta Falcons at now. The biggest question for the Atlanta Falcons is the quarterback position. But if the new coach believes in Michael Penix Jr., he feel like he has a guy with the pieces that's already in place in Atlanta Falcons. I believe this is an attractive job as well. So we'll do these 2 jobs. But we're looking at that. I think Jim Harbaugh probably as a coach probably shoot up as the top prospect out there right now for head coaching, where it goes. A guy who has won the Super Bowl. If you look at his win-loss record, it's unmatched with any other coach that's out there right now, that's vying for a job. So he would be the number 1 guy for any franchise. So that will be include the Atlanta Falcons. Now, when you look at head coaching, sometimes you look at fit and stuff, but the Atlanta Falcons would definitely be a fool not to bring in John Harbaugh and look at his vision, what he think he can do with this team, and it would be a good hire for the Atlanta Falcons. So I'm not going to say that that's where the Atlanta Falcons should go or should not go, but he's definitely has a proven track record. 18 years with one organization, and probably at the most 3 or 4 losing season out of 18 years. Have won a Super Bowl, knocking on the door a couple more times, getting back to the Super Bowl. So he is a prime target for everybody. And so he would be the first guy that the Atlanta Falcons probably should have at the top of their list. Now, after him, other names that we have heard, circling around the Atlanta Falcons is Vance Joseph, defensive coach out of the Denver Broncos. Yes. Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator from the Seattle Seahawks. Anthony Weaver, the defensive coach out of the Miami Dolphins. Of course, Kevin Stefanski, the former head coach of the Cleveland Browns. So those are the coaches so far that we have heard that Atlanta Falcons have interest in. Like I said, John Harbaugh should be at the top of that list. We haven't heard that they requested an interview with him, but it just happened. So we're probably behind on that. But I'm sure that they already have requested a interest in John Harbaugh. A lot of people saying that the New York Giants is probably going to get John Harbaugh that position. And some of these guys looking now at the Baltimore Ravens position, I'm pretty sure they're going to be prime candidates for that as well. So It's other guys that I did mention that we haven't heard anything about. A guy like Cliff Kingsbury, a guy who's worked good with quarterbacks. Um, not so much as a head coach. We know a track record in Arizona, but working with quarterbacks, definitely. So he could be a perfect candidate for work somebody like Lamar Jackson because of some of the things that he'd be able to do. So that's somewhere to look. Um, I think Clint Kubiak was a guy that's a rising young offensive mind up under that Kyle Shanahan, Mike Shanahan, coaching tree. If you want to go all the way back, either further than that, you could look at the way they call games, that wide zone scheme, short passing game, play action pass, all that stuff that Atlanta Falcons really excel at. So that would be something that you definitely look at. Anthony Weaver bringing a defensive minded coach. Kevin Stefanski is a guy that um, two-time coach of the year, right? But his track record with quarterbacks is kind of iffy about that. We just don't know. And like I said, Vance Joseph, you look at some of the things he have done with defensive side of the ball, a leader of men, somebody come in and he hire a good staff would also be a good candidate for the Atlanta Falcons. So it's going to be interesting to see the direction that the Atlanta Falcons go with the coaching search. If they expand their candidacy to more coaches as well, from what we have heard. Now we do know that it's a consultant firm that is spearhead these coaches searches. So they got two firms there, one for the GM and one for the head coach. So that is interesting, but at the same time, we're definitely gonna take a look at that. One of the GMs we heard about so far is Ian Cunningham, a young assistant GM he's currently with the Chicago Bears. But if you look at his track record, he has been on two Super Bowl winning teams, one with the Baltimore Ravens and one with the Philadelphia Eagles. So he has a lot of um, intellectual knowledge about how to get it done, when it comes to building teams, right? Ozzie Newsome is one of the best um, GMs out there, football minds from the Baltimore Ravens, and then the Philadelphia Eagles. What can we say about those guys? How they able to keep all that talent, how he's able to um, manage his cap and draft, right? He have draft really well. That's why the Philadelphia Eagles is always there. So just being with those two organizations, and then look what this season, what Chicago Bears was able to do in just one short season, turning that franchise around. So you can look at his resume, and it's really really good. So Ian Cunningham is one of the guys that they're looking at for the GM position. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see about that. For the president of the basketball operation, we know about Matt Ryan, right? He's supposed to get interviewed here on Thursday or Friday, so be on the lookout for that. He seems like he's the favorite to be in, but of course, with the Rooney Rule, the Atlanta Falcons have to interview more than just give Matt Ryan the job. So they're also looking at Josh Williams, um, another guy, um, and then Mike Disner is another guy. So Josh Williams out of the San Francisco 49ers um, front office, and then Mike Disner is a guy out of the Detroit Lions front office. So those are the three guys right now that is coming in to be the president of football operations. Like I said, Matt Ryan, Josh Williams, and Mike Disner. So that's your head coach and GM search so far. Haven't heard any more GMs, but I'm pretty sure that the Atlanta Falcons is going to look at more than just Ian Cunningham. They're going to look at, make sure that they, especially with these consulting firms coming in, they're going to do their due diligence. But at the same time, you got to jump on this stuff fast, man, because it's 7 open head coaching jobs. So you don't want to pick the leftovers. You want to be able to get your guy. So Atlanta Falcons starting Sunday night really fast. Go ahead and make a decision. Don't waste time, and starting to get out in front of some of these other teams, because right now it's 7 teams that need head coaches. Not all need GMs, not all need all whole front office personnel, but you want to be able to get the right coaching in. What you would really like is to make sure you got the president and the GM in place where they could make the determination on the coach, because you don't want to have a separate um, a GM and a coach get hired separately, because how they align and they're got the same vision together. That's how you not have good equilibrium up in the front office, man. You want to make sure you have some everybody seeing the same vision, from the president of football operations to the GM to the head coach. That's what you need. That's why I think it needs to go in order. But I'm not sure if the Atlanta Falcons are going to be able to do that, because some of these coaches are going to start coming off, and then, like I said, you're not going to get the guy you want. So, the quickest they can hire one of these president of football operations, then they can move on into the GM, and then the head coach would be. That's probably would be preferable what you would want to see, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they're going to have to jump on one of these head coaches, because with 6 teams, looking 7 teams looking for a head coaching job, and it's not a whole lot of candidates out there right now. But you definitely need to make sure you take an eye on that. Um, a couple of more things about the coaching. We do have some coaches that Atlanta Falcons have here, in some of the positions, right? That Atlanta Falcons might want to, keep, because of some of the stuff they build, right? I know, like I said, sometimes you want to just get rid of all the old regime residue, but the guy like Dwayne Leffert, look at this offensive line for Atlanta Falcons. He mentioned that he wants to stay in Atlanta, right? If they bring a guy like Clint Kubiak in, it's perfect. He already understands the wide zone running scheme, right? Keeping a guy like Dwayne Leffert. I seen that the Commanders fired their offensive line coach. So Dwayne Leffert is going to be probably coveted by another team. So that's somebody. Look at a guy like Nate Ali. Look at the work he did with guys like Rook Roro, Brendan Dorless, um, Lakel London. All these guys, man. Katavius Street, David Mamayada. These guys, man. Just look at the work he was able to do. A guy like him, of course, Jeff Albrecht, what he was able to do with this defense this year. So just little things like that. You got to move fast on this, especially when it's this many opening throughout NFL, because everybody's trying to get their guy, and they're trying to bring in the right guys to think about. So that's the latest on the head coach and the GM search, and the president of football operations. So guys, let me know what you think about that. Let's take a look at some of these comments before we move into the next topic. What's going on, everybody that's just chiming in? First and foremost, thank you guys for coming in. T. Terry says, if Matt Ryan gets hired, do you think Matt Ryan would want to keep Kurt here? Like I said, I really believe that Kurt is going to be gone, man. The just it, and this is the reason why I think he's going to be gone, because you need to start over. You don't need to keep on to the old, man. I know it's going to be painful because we don't know about our quarterback situation, but I just feel like Kirk Cousins was with the old regime. Michael Penix is here. He might not be the future, but he's here at an affordable contract, and you can find out about him. And then if you want to go in a different direction with a quarterback, you can do that. But bringing back Kirk Cousins with that dollar amount, it's just not smart. And so I don't know if he want to keep Kirk Cousins here, but I don't think it's a good idea. That's just my opinion on that. At SEGA Noble, John Hobart is definitely my top pick, and Stefanski is definitely the last. I can see him tearing up the locker room. He's too petty. There you go, right there. So he has his guys there. You're right, man. I don't know about Stefanski. We don't know what transpired in Cleveland. We do know that In the last 2 seasons, he only won 8 games, so we do know that. So the Atlanta Falcons might not want to just keep bringing retread coaches in that was not successful with their last stop, especially when you don't have a quarterback in place, and that was one of his issue that he was having before. So um, that's exactly what it is. We got to come in here. Do you like the Bengals football team? Cincinnati Bengals, they're fine, man. They got a great offense. They need to fix their defense. I think if they get a middle of the pack defense, they'd probably be one of the most dangerous teams in the NFL because of their offensive power, firepower they have, and their quarterback needs to make sure he stays healthy. That's where I think about the Cincinnati Bengals. John Moreno said, I have a question. Do you think Blank fire everyone so he can bring in Bill Belichick? That's one name we haven't heard during this coaching search. Um, and if we do, I mean that would be out of nowhere. I mean, nobody's having even talking about Bill Belichick doing these first two couple of days. So if that's the case, we haven't heard the name, and it could be out of nowhere, but you just never know about Bill. He says, Bill wants to control everything. Blame wanted him, but McKay talked him out of it, and that is true. That was the rumor going around. So, but if you look at the structure they're trying to develop, is they're having a president, GM, a coach, and the president report to Arthur Blank. If they're going to go with that function, um, I don't see Bill coming in dictating anything because I think everything will run through whoever the president is going to be, and that's the way they probably want to have it. So that's the way I look at it. All right. Let's get into the next topic for today, which is what the title says: the in-season review. And you know, the Atlanta Falcons win 8-9. Let's just start off there. Win 8-9. They win one more game. They're playing in the tournament this weekend. Um, wild card weekend, trying to get into, you know, make a run for the Super Bowl. That's where they was. So they started the season off 8-9. And we're gonna talk about today pretty much is just the overall team where they're at, what took place, some good things that happened and some bad things, right? The positives and the negatives going into next year, despite all the changes going to be made. So, this is definitely going to be different from what we've seen this year, all the way around, because we're going to have new everything from top to bottom, right? If they decide to keep some coaches, maybe some things stay the same, like a Jeff Albrecht, maybe, but we don't know. But that's where we're at. So the Atlanta Falcons in total defense, they were 15th. In total offense, they were 17th. Um, we look at some individual stats. You look at a guy like Michael Penix Jr., who was, 66% completion, played in 8 total games, right? Played in 8 total games. Kirk Cousins played in 10 total games. So let's just say that Kirk Cousins played in 10 total games. In those 8 games that Michael Penix played in, he passed for 1,982 yards. He had 9 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Kirk Cousins in his 10 games played had 10 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He was 61.7% completion. He threw for 1,721 yards in those 10 games. So, the whole notion that Kirk Cousins plays so much better than Michael Penix is really not true. Yes, he went 5-3 in those games, but if you go look at the numbers, it wasn't indicative of something Kirk Cousins did. The Atlanta Falcons just played better down the stretch when they had nothing else on the line. Um, but most of that was Bijan Robinson, right? You look at a guy like Bijan Robinson, um, who had 1,478 yards rushing, 820 yards passing. I mean receiving. So that's where all the offense came from. And then you look at another guy who I really believe that Atlanta Falcons need to decide to keep, and that's Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts had 928 receiving yards, almost you know, captured that 1,000-yard mark. He had 5 touchdown passes. This is besides his first year of his career. This is one of his best seasons, and this might be his best season, right? Because with the 5 touchdowns, I think he only had 1 touchdown that first year, his rookie year. So this might be Kyle Pitts' best season, and I think he made the case for Atlanta Falcons to consider bringing him back to be part of this what Atlanta Falcons going to be building for the future with Drake London and Bijan Robinson. So 928, he led the team in receptions, only because Drake London only played 12 games this year. So that's one reason why. But Kyle Pitts led the team in receiving yards with 928, and that's where you look at the number 4 overall pick and be like, there you go, right? Because we want to know where that Kyle Pitts was. I came out early in the season, thought he was going to be the key, but that New York Jets game, man. Let's just go to that one game, and if we just play better on special teams, we win that game, and I think we'll be having a whole nother outlook on this Atlanta Falcons team this year, because we'll be playing in the wild card at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium this weekend, instead of starting all over, cleaning house, whatever we've been doing these last couple of years. So that's where we're at. But Kyle Pitts. You go to the defensive side of the ball. Kay Nellis led the team in tackles once again, with 107 tackles. Interesting thing about that, Jesse Bates was second with 98. Xavier Watts was third with 96, and then right behind that was Divine Diablo with 73, who, remember, missed 4 games in the season. So that's a good, like I said, guys, you think about those 4 guys there, you got to try to find a way to bring Kay Ellis back. But with Kay Nellis, Jesse Bates, Xavier Watts, Divine Diablo, that's a nice safety linebacker crew right there that the Atlanta Falcons could definitely look at. Jesse Bates with his 3 interceptions, Jesse Watts with his 5 interceptions. The Atlanta Falcons had 16 interceptions on the season. That is pretty good from a defensive standpoint. Of course, we know they were second in sacks, broke the franchise record with 57 sacks. And I just wanted you guys to listen to all the guys that got sacks for the Atlanta Falcons this year. Leonard Floyd had 3.5. Contavious Street had 2. Zach Harrison, before he went on IR, was actually leading the team in sacks with 4.5. Ruke Rororo, his first extended, snaps that he had, 3.5 sacks. Of course, James Pierce Jr., the rookie sensation, had 10.5 sacks. Billy Bowman, before he went down, had a sack and a half. Brandon Dorless, another guy, didn't get not enough playing time last year, came in. He had 8.5 sacks. He was second on the team in sacks. Ronnie Harrison had 2 sacks. Came in. Mikael London, I talked about him, a guy that that Nate Ali was able to get a lot of. He had 5 sacks. Armor Ebiketie had 2 sacks. Jalen Walker had 5.5 sacks. Our other rookie on the team. D. Alford had 2 sacks. David Amayada had 1. Divine Diablo had 1, and then Kalen Ellis, rounded off. He had 3.5 sacks. So, like I said, guys, that's your 57 sacks, and you see the number of guys, different guys that was getting after the quarterback this year. That's some of the positives. That's one of the positive things. You look at those 16 interceptions. You look at the 57 sacks. Those are the positive things that any coach coming in can take from this team and be able to build from that. Some of the things that hindered them was not being able to get out of the field on third downs, especially in situational football moments. Being able to start to run in some games was huge. You look at the Indianapolis game when Jonathan Taylor I think had a franchise record for his team on rushing yards. So those are some of the negatives to look at from a defensive standpoint. But when you're looking at the 57 sack, the 16 interceptions, that talk about those 4 guys that I talked about, from linebackers to safeties. You got AJ Terrell there, who's be playing at all pro level sometimes, but he's still probably a top 10 corner in this league. So you look at those are the positives. If you want to take away from this season's, one of the things that have been hindering Atlanta Falcons for years has been the pass rush, and to be second in sacks and look at the number of guys. It wasn't just one guy that was dominating; it was multiple guys getting out the quarterback, putting out the pressure, and that's the kind of defense you want because when offense is trying to scheme to stop the pressure, is coming from everywhere. It's hard to try to pinpoint one or two guys. And with this pressure that Atlanta Falcons was able to generate, so many guys got a chance to eat, and that's what you want to see. So that's definitely in a positive side. Of course, the negative side, you go to the offensive side of the ball. Um, this is a stat that you guys definitely want to listen to. One of the biggest issues the Atlanta Falcons had this season was third down, right? Third down percentages. The first 7 games, the Atlanta Falcons at 42.3%. The first 7 games, right? The last 8, so the last 8 from 8 on to 18, the Atlanta Falcons was 22.7% on third down. That's the negative. That's where you lose games when you're 22.7%. So the first 7 was better, and it's hard to even go back that far and look at how good it was. Now, interesting thing about that, Michael Penix was the quarterback most of those games. And then you go look, 8 through 14, 8 to 18. Of course, Michael Penix was quarterback in some of those games as well. But for the most part, it was Kirk Cousins, and third down percentage was 22.7. Now, I don't put any of that on the quarterbacks, to be honest with you. I put that on play calling and not being able to fix the issues that Atlanta Falcons had on third down. So you will look at the negatives for one reason why the Atlanta Falcons did not succeed is third down percentages. Now, it says they end up at 48.1% throughout the season. Math ain't mathing on that. So, but just looking at the third down percentage throughout the season, and you break it up in halves, where they got worse throughout the season instead of better. And what you want to see teams improve on their offense, on their whole team, you want to see improvements. So that's definitely one of the negative things that we can take away from this Atlanta Falcons, especially on the offense side of the ball. And then last but not least, probably the most negative thing that we can talk about from the Atlanta Falcons is special teams, right? We're talking about block kicks. We're talking about kick coverage, and we're talking about missed field goals. From those 3 things, is we talking about kick return coverage, right? I mean, kick returns, right? We had one guy catch the ball at the 2-yard line, fumble, and they get the ball and punch it in. That's the New York Jets game, right? So we missed field goals. We had 3 different field goal kickers. You have to tip your hat off to Zane Gonzalez because he came in and started being a steady thing for Atlanta Falcons. So I think a guy that definitely has the opportunity to be back with his team next year is Zane Gonzalez. But for the most part, the special team was atrocious, right? So when we're looking at the in-season review, negative stuff, you look at third down for the offensive side of the ball, and you definitely want to look at the special teams, right? Those if you want to pinpoint reasons why the Atlanta Falcons didn't win, those where you can look at, right? Of course, you can go to some individual play, some inconsistencies from your young rookie quarterback, 100%. But the play calling, I think, really hurt the Falcons more than anything. And then not being able to manage situational football from a coaching standpoint also hurt this team. And that's why the Atlanta Falcons decided to make the decision they made. But those are some of the things that when a head coach looking at this team, right, and he take a breakdown, he can look at those certain things and be like, I can work with that, right? If we get a piece here, like I think they need another defensive tackle, bring them in either in the draft, or bring somebody in through free agency, right? They still need to look at a secondary on the other side of the cornerback. I think Billy Bowman is going to be back, and he's going to be able to pick up where he left off. Dee Alford deserved another opportunity to be back the way he played down the stretch. Believe that or not, believe me saying that because he really did. But they got to figure out in the other cornerback two position. Um, bring some bring a little bit more depth in the linebacker room. And then that defensive line, I do love the pass rusher. You got to remember, a guy like Braylon Trice is coming back. Zach Harrison is coming back as well. So you got some definitely some pieces that the Atlanta Falcons can grow on. But like I said, a coach looking at this roster, GM looking at this roster, and going back and watching the film, and can see where it's easy to make things better for this team, and that's what they definitely need to do. 100%. If they could do that, um, you know, besides fixing that quarterback position, which is the toughest thing to do, we all know that. But if you put enough pieces around a quarterback, you're not asking your quarterback to do a whole lot, right? Just don't do a Desmond Ritter and turn over the ball a lot. Um, and maybe you have opportunity to win some of these games, right? So that's what I think, guys. That's my in season review. Didn't want to go into too much detail because but it's a lot of good things that Atlanta Falcons did this year, right? Despite being 89, but we had guys had career years. Let's just put it in perspective. Bijan had one of the greatest running back years of all time, top five maybe, right? Bijan Robinson, over 2,300 yards total. Um, James Pierce Jr. James Pierce Jr. The rookie had 10.5 sacks, the last one to have since Michael Parsons, right? Xavier Watts, 5 interceptions as a rookie. Um, Jesse Bates continue to do what he do, right? Um, like I said, franchise record in sacks. So much positive things that you can see. I think Kyle Pitts had a resurgence. That's something that we definitely want to see. And if Drake London don't get hurt, I think he was going to have a career, another even top his year that he had last year. And that's what we definitely want to see. So many bright spots. We get Caleb McGarry back at that right tackle position. Um, we get a guy like Ryan Nuzul who's going in his second year. Should be more, have that more experience, being the center for the Atlanta Falcons. I think that the offensive line is good. Um, do need to fix some things, but I do like offensive line. I like our weapons that we got on the outside. We maybe need to go look at some more receivers as well. Darnell Mooney came in fourth on receiving behind Bijan with 443 yards himself. Um, but we need more production from our second receiver. So that's something that Atlanta Falcons is looking at. But it's not a lot of holes, guys. Not as many as people would think. I think the biggest issue is the quarterback. We got to figure that out, what they're going to do about that. But you bring in 4 or 5 guys. I think when we went into last off season, I said the Atlanta Falcons probably going to have about 40%, 50% new starters on defense. I can't say that this year, right? They won't have that much turnover on defense from the starter position. They got to create depth, but from the starter position, they got a lot of pieces that's already there. Um, they just got to add a couple more, about maybe 3 or 4 new starters, maybe on defense. On the offensive side of the ball, like I said, once you figure out the quarterback position, get another receiver, add another running back to go with Bijan since Tyler's not going to be here anymore, and go from there. That's what I think the Atlanta Falcons have a great opportunity to do. Let's look at some of these last comments here before we get up out of here. Let's go, Rakonda. Though we had a disappointing season, what are your highlights of the season for us? One of my most exciting games was the Minnesota game. It was early in the season, and we went on the Sunday night football and we put it on the Minnesota Vikings. That was one of my favorite games. Of course, Bijan Robinson. Pretty much, you just go down the list of some of the things he was doing. Of course, against Buffalo. Of course, what he was able to do against the Los Angeles Rams. The Commanders, he had a great game there. He had a great game with Minnesota as well. Bijan just played really well throughout the season. I got kind of nervous though because I thought they was running him in the ground. The interesting thing about Bijan Robinson, he had 287 carries. That's it. So it's not like he had a lot of carries. He did, like I said, he had a lot of receptions though, right? For 820 yards. But as far as carries go, he only had 287 carries. That's not that bad. That's not bad at all, right? You look at a guy like Drake London had 919 yards. And like I said, he only played 12 games. He had 7 touchdowns. So if you're looking at those, some of my highlights, guys, just our stars that we had: Drake London, Kyle Pitts, 3 touchdown game that he had, Bijan Robinson. Um, that first game of the season when Michael Penix almost won the game for us, diving across the goal line, right, showing the heart that he got to try to get a win. So those moments you're gonna look back and and try not to be so disappointed in this season. But those are some good moments. They really were. Atlanta Falcons had 5 primetime games where they went 4-1. You can't beat that. So, NFL, just for a note, if you want to put Atlanta Falcons in prime time again, you should, man, because they really, show it out in prime time games. They gave the fans, a really good show in each one of those games. I'm a Bengals fan. Should I believe the Bengals could make the playoffs? Oh, hell yeah, 100%. The Bengals can make playoffs. Your quarterback just need to stay healthy, man. Even with the defense being, so lackluster, if your quarterback stay healthy, you probably be in the playoffs regardless because the offense is so explosive. If you want to put it in perspective, if you look at a team like the Indianapolis Colts, where they were in their heyday with Peyton Manning, where they put up a lot of points. Defense was so, right? Look at the greatest show on turf with the Los Angeles Rams. Defense was so, but their offense was so electric. So you have some examples out there where the offense can lead a team to the playoffs and get it done. So yes, 100%, your team does have a chance to make the playoffs. So guys, there you have it. Let me know what you think about all the things I talked about today. First of all, we talked about Kirk Cousins' contract restructure and the huge decision Atlanta Falcons got to make here by March 13th. I don't think it's a huge decision. I think they just need to go ahead and do the things they got to do to make sure you don't owe that man those 67.9. I got something here that the reason why you don't want to give Kirk Cousins $67.9 million. Over his career, Kirk Cousins have made $331 million. Put that in perspective. He has made more than any other football player in NFL history. He has made $331 million. How many playoff games have Kirk Cousins won? Just think about that. Right? The Atlanta Falcons does not owe him anything. They gave him $100 million guaranteed, right? And if the new regime will feel that Kirk Cousins is the answer going into this whole new change, I think they're mistaken. That's just my point. So that's how I feel about that. We talked about the GM head coach search, the president of basketball football operations search. We talked about all those things, and then we just talked about the NC review and what the Atlanta Falcons was able to do from a good standpoint, bad standpoint, and some of the things that we think that they can fix going into 2026 with the whole new regime. So there you have it, guys. Thank you for tuning in today. Be on the lookout. See what hat I'll be wearing next, and we'll talk about where the Atlanta Falcons, any more changes that they got on the horizon. This is your boy Ricondo. Come back at you with another video. Peace.